listening to Rings Kings Boxing World.
You're rocking with Ring Kings Boxing. What's up, fam? Shout out to the family. I'm Big Q chiming in on this episode of Ring Kings Boxing. And of course, as you can see on the screen, wasn't a very good outing for Anthony Joshua as he loses in the bout with Oleksandr Usyk, falls short in a split decision. And he didn't have the best of reactions to the fight, Anthony Joshua. But the reality is, if you would match these guys up against each other 10 times in a row, Oleksandr Usyk would beat Anthony Joshua every damn time. You know, it's because he's overall a better fighter. You know, and that's not a disrespect to Anthony Joshua. What it does speak to is the fact that boxing is about skills and levels. And Oleksandr Usyk is on a whole nother level than Anthony Joshua. That's just the reality, man. That's just the reality. And he showed it. I mean, he bulked up. He was still 20 pounds lighter than Anthony Joshua. And Joshua was a lot more aggressive in the second fight. But it didn't make a difference. He was able to impose some punishment on Oleksandr Usyk, and he absorbed it. Oleksandr Usyk put together, you know, a slick boxing performance, and there were rounds where AJ was actually handling the business. But at the end of the day, it comes down to levels, and Oleksandr Usyk is on a whole nother level than Anthony Joshua. That's one side of it. The second side of it is AJ just completely freaked out and just started doing all kind of stuff post-fight. He took the belts and did like a Riddick Bowe thing. All he needed was a trash can to throw the goddamn belts in. And he threw them on the floor. You know, the ring belt, and I forgot what the other belt he did it with, but he completely just threw them on the ring's floor. It was kind of strange watching him behave like that. But at the end of the day, you got to understand, man, is that in the fight game, it's all about skills, and he just wasn't enough. He took the immediate rematch, and that's what he was supposed to do, in my opinion. It's just the fact that this is a bad stylistic matchup for AJ. Usyk's constant movement, his footwork, moving around, sliding and punching, throwing 3 and 4, 5 punches in a row on Anthony Joshua, finding the openings to deliver upon, and he's a slick fighter with a lot going on for him, and he beat Anthony Joshua straight up. He beat him the first time around, and AJ was a lot more active in the rematch, but it did no good. You know, it wasn't enough. Now, there were rounds where Anthony Joshua should have got really super busy on, and maybe that's some of the disappointment that he's feeling because of some of the rounds that he could have been a lot more active in with Usyk. And I thought that should have been more of an aggressive approach going into the fight, where some of these things you got to pose as much punishment on Usyk, but Usyk's not going to stand there and let you punch at him or punch on him. He's going to slide, move, pivot. He's going to counter punch. He did a lot of that in the fight. But when it's all said and done, it's all in the hands of Oleksandr Usyk as he defeats Anthony Joshua to retain his belts. And now he stares ahead with heavyweight unification on his mind against the likes of Tyson Fury, who amazingly now Tyson Fury wants to come out of retirement, but he wants you to pay for him to come out of retirement, and that you better get your checkbook out because this is going to be very expensive. So he's retired. He gave up the ring belt, but not the actual belt. And I kind of figured this, and I said as much about Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury be full of shit, man. He talk a lot of shit because he full of shit. And Tyson Fury was talking all that shit about, oh, this, that, and third. He got up on social media and talked about the fight was boring and it was bullshit and all that. But let somebody say that about his fights. You know, so I mean, the reality is all of a sudden now he's going to come out of retirement for the unification fight. He had a semi-retirement situation going on for him, and he retired because he was sitting there waiting to see what Usyk and Joshua was going to do, so that he himself didn't have to have any fights, and he wanted to take on Chisora, which he's beaten Chisora before. That was an uninteresting fight. But now we get to see the unification fight. Personally, Usyk and Tyson Fury, it's going to eventually happen. I don't know if to say this year, but more than likely it'll take place probably next year. Now that the smoke has, as you know, has been cleared, and there are two heavyweights standing there looking at it, very slick fighters. And Usyk, I would caution Tyson Fury, who has a very high opinion of himself, not to underestimate Oleksandr Usyk. He's a very humble fighter, very intelligent fighter, very slick fighter. And in the end, he talked about comparing him to Klitschko. Let me tell you something. Klitschko was a hell of a fighter, but Oleksandr Usyk, man, they're severely underestimating this guy. He can fight. So Tyson Fury, with all your bullshit shit talking, I would caution you not to underestimate Oleksandr Usyk, because he can bring it to you, because you got some holes in your fucking game too. But Anthony Joshua, on to him. Very, 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 very terrible way he did it around there, and even Usyk said that he bullied his cornerman. He stole to a degree. Well, giving credit to Oleksandr Usyk's victory, I don't understand why they gave him a mic in the first place. He was tearing ass. He threw the belts away, and when he told him threw them belts away, they shouldn't have gave him the goddamn mic. But for shits and giggles, they allowed AJ to vent and talk about how hard he trained for the fight, and how this, that, and the third, and the fact that people kept telling him you should have threw more punches in bunches. And he says difficult, it's hard because he's 240 something odd pounds, that he can't, it's hard as hell to throw punches in bunches. Well, you know what's even harder? You without the belts, and now you have to kind of fight your way back up in that thing. And I think that's the thing that's really eating at AJ, is the fact that he will not have those belts. He lost the rematch, which puts him in unfamiliar territory, because he usually, the last time Andy the Destroyer took his belts, he got the immediate rematch and beat Andy and got the belts back. He thought that would be the situation this time around. This is unfamiliar territory for AJ. So he would have to then fight his way back into a championship situation. So other fights on the horizon, they're talking about Derek Chisora and other people for AJ in the interim. But my thing is, AJ, just kind of chill a bit and kind of figure out some stuff. But he looked better in this fight. He has a good trainer right there, so I would have to caution him just to kind of stick with that and just learn from this. Anytime you fight a guy like Oleksandr Usyk in the ring, it's things that you can take away from that. Maybe you can encourage, the trainer can encourage AJ to kind of absorb some of the things that Usyk was doing, the constant slipping, the foot movement, the ability to punch from angles. And I know that that's something that has to be learned over time. But if AJ wants to be a champion and take on guys like that, he's going to have to kind of increase that. Remember, it's almost like what happened with Canelo Alvarez. When Canelo Alvarez lost to Floyd Mayweather, and he went back and kind of worked on his game, and then he came forward, and it was some time before Canelo lost again. But he thought he could just handle guys with power until he met Mayweather, and Mayweather made him understand, man, there's levels to this shit. So you would meet guys in the sport of boxing that's on a whole nother level than what you are, and then it just like baffles your mind that you put your best foot forward, but you could not beat this person. So unfamiliar territory, he handled it really poorly. He was cussing and throwing the belts, and he was fussing at people, saying act professional, and he was trying to get at him. It was totally very bad look for Anthony Joshua. So anyway, congratulations to Oleksandr Usyk for his retention of his belts, and now he's calling out Tyson Fury. We're going to do a video on Tyson Fury coming up momentarily, where he is saying that he now wants to come out of retirement to fight Usyk for the unification, and that probably will more than likely take place sometimes next year. So with that being said, that'll be the end of this episode of Ring Kings Boxing. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me. Please feel free to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and make Ring Kings Boxing one of your favorite boxing podcasts. I'm Big Q, and I'm gonna holler at you guys later. Peace.
Subscribe now and make Ring Kings Boxing your source for all the latest fight news.